Thanks, Jen.
How are you? I was on the phone with Woody. That's why I was late.
Oh, come on.
And
Give me that.
I was only out for a few hours Friday because I had 2 night meetings last week. So I said, you know what? Not coming in. I'm going to go offline for a second to find you that thing with.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Tom, you caught me snacking yesterday.
Yes, and you're catching me with my lunch right now.
Woody, I was powering my PowerPoint duties with mini M&Ms.
Wait. Did they fall in the middle of your keyboard? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was like, I had them. It's funny. I was joking with my sister. My dad, not surprisingly, is a type A, and so he used to have M&Ms. Well, he still has M&Ms, but he's alive. While he watched the Bills game, but he'd take a handful and then he'd organize them by color, and he'd do like color rows. And so I was joking with my sister that I was becoming like my dad. So I posted a picture of my M&Ms all neatly lined up in rows.
Oh boy.
They still make more browns than any other color. So,
I've never really analyzed it. You can get custom inscribed M&Ms.
yes. And
I've done that a couple of times.
custom mixes, all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you just get a regular old bag, they load you up on the browns, for better or worse.
Probably cheaper in some fashion.
Have you ever been to the M&M store in New York City or Vegas?
No.
I've been to both.
Oh.
And
Amazing. Just smells like chocolate.
you know why M&Ms were invented?
No.
Aha. Particularly during World War II, chocolate bars would melt in soldiers' pockets, but the M&M basically wouldn't melt, at least under less than extreme conditions. And so it became very popular.
Were they the one melts in your mouth, not in your hands? Was that
Yes.
M&M? Right? That's
Yeah.
the one.
There you go.
And did you know that M&M said no to ET, and thus they invented Reese's Pieces? And I'm sure they regretted that decision.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder why they said no.
Well, there you go.
Okay. So that's our little history lesson.
That's our history lesson. Exactly.
Each of us have learned at least one thing new.
Oh,
Well, we got Cassie. Are we waiting for
I
Peter?
think
And
I haven't heard from Peter. We got Peter, Jack, and Paul. Jen, do you know if John Howland's going to be able to join?
He is not. He just called me. I was kidding when I was saying that it was Woody that made me late. It was actually John.
Okay.
He has to put out a couple big fires.
Okay.
So he apologizes, but I've told him to make sure he reads your PowerPoint, which I've just finished going through again. I've read it a couple times. He did have a specific question, which I'll bring up when you get to that point in the PowerPoint.
Okay, that's great. And do you happen to know whether he can make the public hearings tomorrow night or not?
I don't, but I will follow. I will ask him.
Okay.
It's been a Monday on a Tuesday, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. I think I had a Monday and a Monday and a Monday and a
Yeah,
Tuesday.
I just feel like if I told you all the people that have come in, I was like, is there like a bus outside? It was crazy. All right.
Hey, but George Littlejohn can't stop by anymore. So like there's a blessing there.
God rest him. Oh,
God bless his soul.
God bless his soul and his temper.
what did he do?
Oh, yeah, I can't even say it. This is a family program.
Yeah, George Littlejohn, he was my neighbor across the street and super sweet to us, but known to have a temper. Pulled a shotgun on the high seas.
Oh God.
quite the New England lobsterman with a temperament to match. So
Well, he was a member of the yacht club, sailed 210s for decades, and was well known for having, I believe this is true, never won a race.
I think that was senior, not junior.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Senior,
this is a
Really?
junior?
this is junior.
Oh, I
Senior,
don't know him.
senior was the gentleman. Junior was the was more of a pirate.
Oh,
Oh, and I love fishermen, but I swear he would like roll in the worst thing and then come in on purpose and walk around. Be like, what is that?
He wasn't the guy that used to come in raging at selectmen meetings like 20 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Or
that's
was that a guy named Figueredo? There was another guy, and then he came in, he just came in and sat in the back and he swore at us, and then in the parking lot he swore at us for what reason?
sounds
we
like
didn't-
him.
We didn't know. And then a few weeks later, his boat got put on the rocks off of the mouth of the harbor. So it was poetic justice.
Yeah, I don't know. That definitely could have been George for sure. All right,
I
I'm gonna
forget who it
call.
was, but anyway.
I'm gonna call the zoning bylaw working group meeting to order at 1:05. Present Katie Dugan,
President Tom Callahan.
Woody Chitik, aye.
President Cass Melchester.
Present Genorum.
awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. Before I forget, do you guys mind doing approval of the minutes of September 23rd, 2021? I make a motion to approve the minutes from September 23rd. Can I get a second?
Second, Chitik.
Sorry.
All in favor? How's that one?
All in
I
favor, sorry. I, Kitty Dugan.
Genorum.
Aye, Woody Chitik.
Yeah,
All right, I promise to get a good night's sleep and have caffeine before tomorrow night's meeting so my brain doesn't freeze up. So a couple things. The main agenda item is going through the draft presentation for the planning board. So we'll get to that in a second, but I did just want to cover off a couple things so that everybody is aware. First off, Tom had circulated previously to the group the residential access regulations, which was a combination of the common driveway regulations, which exists, plus a new component, which relates to non-subdivision private ways. And Tom, you combined them into a single form of regulations.
Yeah.
We'll see if we have time to talk about it or just give an overview at the end so everybody has a little bit more context. But I did want to let people know that that is moving to a public hearing with the planning board on Wednesday, November 17th. So we've got some time to revise it and talk about it as a committee, but Lauren needed to start the sort of public hearing advertisement process. This public hearing process, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, is a little bit different than the 40A one for zoning in that you can have multiple public hearings on this topic. So it's not like A, regulations don't have to go to town meeting, and B, there's no penalty for not approving first time around, although we would hope
Correct.
that would be the case. Okay.
Correct.
So I just want to have everybody mark that on their calendars, and I think we'll focus the next meeting around those regulations, but I just wanted to get that out there. The other thing, just calendar wise, that I want to make sure people knew is that once we get through the planning board hearings on the 13th and perhaps being continued to the 20th, we then kind of roll to the more typical meetings and approvals. Right now, we are teed up for advisory on Wednesday, the 27th. So the advisory vote and discussion around the 3 zoning articles would happen on the 27th. And then I believe that puts us in the glide path. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, but I think they're trying to get the select board vote for Tuesday, the 2nd of November. Does that make sense?
That sounds right.
Okay, so two dates for people to mark for more of these discussions and articles: Wednesday, the 27th for advisory, and Tuesday, November 2nd for select board. And I think that's it in terms of logistics.
I can't make the select board meeting. We have zoning that night.
Oh, yes, you do. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully by that point, our fate will either be, our fate will be locked in a positive mode. As you know, the select board tends to be quite the high level conversation, and they are going to be.
Did you, what? That was a joke, I hope.
Now. Anyway, so main topic is, what do we say to the planning board? So this is a draft. Please, everyone, you can tear it apart, delete. It's quite heavy in terms of content right now. I do like the shock and awe strategy, as you guys know, but if I've got a little too heavy with the shock and the awe and the detail, I'm happy to delete or change things up. But the thought process was setting a little bit of context first. Some of this, actually, most of this, the planning board has already seen. But I guess my reflection on the August discussion with the planning board when we kind of previewed the articles is that if we don't remind them why we're doing this, they get confused. So setting the context of like, it's not just us in a dark closet cooking this shit up. Like we've got background, we've got input from the master plan. We've had these conversations with you before. So it's a little bit of like, this is why we're here today in the bigger context. And then we jump into each of the working group articles, kind of laying out the important information they need to know, the analysis and research that we did, and then ending with kind of the rationale for the proposed zoning change. I thought that in terms of how, question, I guess my thought process is that each of the hearings has to be open separately. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So my thought process was we would open the hearing on zoning, working group 1, and then go through the presentation of the slides, and then skip over obviously to the warrant article language specifically once we kind of give them the background, and then either close the hearing and vote, or just close it, continue the hearing to a later date.
You don't really have that last topic on this table of contents.
Well, that's what
You kind of end with public hearing discussion.
Well, that's kind of what that's what I wanted to ask you guys about, because my intent was to lead it into a public hearing discussion. And I didn't.
Are you going to cover the language or not? Yeah, you are.
Yes. So
there's a lot of redundancy here. I wonder if you could, in addition to the goals, say, here's the format we're following.
Yeah.
Now we have 3 presentations to make for you, so you don't have to go through the rationale each time. People know what the order of analysis is.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a crowded
Yeah,
slide until you look at it a couple of times and you say, oh, well, it's just redundant.
Maybe you just put a little table of contents above each article. Like we're going to go to this one, and then this content, instead of having a table of contents.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I think what I'll do here is I'll suggest that we go through the goals to set the context, and then we open each of the public hearings separately. And for each of the public hearings, we'll do a quick overview, which will contain analysis and research and the rationale, and then we'll hop to the warrant language. I can reorder this so it looks less busy, because we are going to use the same flow for warrant article 1, 2, and 3. I guess, Tom, is your recommendation that we expect to just have the hearing and discussion and be continued to the 20th, or should I put on the slide or push for a vote?
Yeah, my hope is we have a vote on all three.
Okay.
We're setting aside the night for this. We've got other things to do on the 20th. So I'd rather we use the time, as long as it takes to get them through this tomorrow night.
Katie, I just wanted to provide some feedback when you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, in just speaking to someone who works on this side of things, I just want to be sensitive to confidentiality. The article, because I see public hearing discussion for article number 1 and the deletion of single lot exemption. So just a tidbit of feedback. The certain individual who's works in the community and will be doing a lot as it relates to this change, his comment to us. And so I just wanted to kind of more or less be prepared for it. And I know that we kind of already we are prepared and we know what some opposition and feedback is going to be, but from the community, it sounds like the deletion of single lot exemption, although it is lenient, it's not fair. It's destroying people's retirements and future planning. It's not fair that every lot in certain neighborhoods has been able to do this and I can't do this. So I wanted to share that with the group because I see public hearing discussion and I just want to be prepared if there is going to be public hearings and how much time that's going to take up. So I just thought it was good feedback. I think the other thing is that he did say, and I know that we kind of anecdotally discussed a building moratorium, but he said that he's actually working on 7 subdivisions, lowercase subdivisions, so just redivisions, I guess, 7 in preparation before a special town meeting in December because of this. And I wanted to share that as well. So just want to provide that. I know that it's a lot, but I don't know if it's going to come up tomorrow specifically or just being prepared for, voting and who shows up for special town meeting. But I just thought I would share that.
Okay. So I guess that just leads me to think that perhaps we won't get to a vote on some of these, that we may need to continue them to the 20th. So one by one, we'll go through them and hopefully push for a vote. If we can't, we'll continue.
I don't know if that helps change the organization, like if we want to knock off 2 and 3
Yeah,
first.
well, not to get too technical, but that guy is probably too late. The moratorium is already in effect.
As soon as the ad ran, didn't that freeze what he could
Yes,
do?
it freezes.
But
so-
or are they protected?
No, he can.
They're only protected if the recommendation is shot down at town meeting or beforehand. They're not protected if it goes through.
But would those applications be blocked?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Katie, that was what my question on, I know we're jumping ahead, but where you outline that on page 6, section 1.
Yeah.
So my question is here, if you read that, section 1, structures or uses lawfully in existence, if they're lawful. I just read this, that they would be allowed to do it. So maybe and there's just one.
No, but before the first public
Well,
notice of
hold
the
on,
public
guys.
hearings. Let's come to that. Let's come to it. I'm just saying, Cassie.
I did not mean to create a tailspin. I know that
No. Like,
kind of public comment is important and I just wanted to bring it up.
so the way this works, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, is we are going to make our presentation.
Yes.
The planning board is going to ask its questions and we'll make our presentation and then we'll jump over to the exact language of the warrant, which is not exciting because it's literally 2 sentences or 1 sentence. The planning board will ask its questions and then Amy as chair will open it up to public comment. And that's when the public will be invited in to ask questions. Part of the reason for doing this presentation is to help educate the public, because I frankly think that most people don't understand what the protections under statutory law are versus what is given under the bylaws themselves.
Mhm.
And I do think it's going to be difficult to analyze or rebut individuals who are bringing forth, this is how it's going to impact me, because the details behind how it's going to impact them are tied to things like, the table of area dimensions as it relates to the parcels that they own, the status of when the lots were registered, whether it was pre-July 1st, 1955 or before, whether the lots are adjoining, whether the lots are in common ownership or they're in separate ownership. There's lots of facts that need to be kind of teased out before you can actually truly understand where people's lot falls in this conversation. But I do think that there's a lot of misunderstanding out there that we have to start by educating, and hopefully with some education we can then, and an explanation of why this is important from a land use perspective, and ultimately it's up to the community. So
Exactly. Yep.
I'm prepared to have that conversation. I truly believe that absent deletion of this, we're going to have, you can't make as a community statements like it feels overcrowded and it can't handle more housing, and there's an imbalance between the scale of housing and lot size, and not have a conversation about 8.3 B and C. I mean, there's a reason why we're doing this, and that's why I wanted to start with the master plan recommendations, to kind of say we didn't choose this, it chose us, by listening to the master plan. In terms of the specifics,
Are you starting your?
I am. So I'm gonna rejigger this so that it's clear that we're using the same flow for each of the 3 articles. We'll pause to hear comments from the planning board, then we'll open it up to a public discussion or comment period, and then it'll go back to the planning board for a vote. And I'll make that clear in terms of the flow. So the next slide, again, was to provide the context for what are we doing here today? Why are these 3 articles important? And so this has been recycled from before. And, it just really, to me, sort of calls out kind of the key input that the community gave over the master plan process around land use and housing. Thoughts, Woody?
No, I think this and probably the next one are
good,
are important.
Okay.
Where do you somewhere in this, you have cited the goals of the zoning bylaws that talk about preservation of neighborhoods and stuff. Where is that?
So that's right here. So this is.
Oh, that's slide 4.
This is slide 4.
I wonder if slide 4, well, let's go through the way you've done it. You could almost flip 4 and 3, but let's worry about that later.
I actually like that idea, Woody. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay. So this, honestly, Woody, I was thinking a little bit about some of the comments you made at the last meeting where you so impressively rattled off some of the purposes of zoning under the Zoning Act. And again, I was trying to set the stage for what are we doing here? Zoning has a purpose. And, under the Zoning Act, the purpose is to do things like lessen congestion of the streets, conserve health and safety, to prevent overcrowding of the land, to encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the town, to conserve the value of land and buildings. Like those are sort of, not all, but some of the major ones that are important to us from a land use perspective. So that's.
Yeah, it really runs, it really puts balance under the statement that zoning exists to increase housing or whatever, it may, if it encourages the most appropriate use of land, blah, blah, blah. But zoning is really not a developer's dream. It's a way to protect and preserve what we have. And that's that first bullet, big one.
Yeah.
And it's worth talking about that a little bit. I hate to keep making suggestions. This could comfortably be broken into 2 slides. The first one is just get them to focus on why we have zoning.
Yep.
And it does promote neighborhoods and conserve the value of land, you know, anyway. And then you could go into the principles, but that first bullet should be embedded in people's thinking, I believe.
Okay, I'll split it into 2 slides. You know me, I like to jam.
Yeah, I know.
Check
And
my
if others
slides.
think that that's not necessary, fine. I just want, when I see a slide or an over, you know, something with, you know, dozens of words on it, I start to look for what am I really supposed to be focused on?
Okay, so I'll do a
Katie, I
slide.
do think that I agree with that, but I also think that Katie does a great job of not just reading the slide, that you actually, you use it
Yeah.
as a guide and you do speak.
Well, if we can get by with this, if it doesn't look too busy, fine.
I'm happy to split it. It takes 30 seconds to split it into 2, and I think I can highlight some of the purposes of zoning. So we'll do that. And I do think it's important to ground people because zoning exists to serve the community and the community's objectives as it relates to land use and housing. So that's what we're attempting to do. And that'll set the stage. And then the second part of the slide, you know, is I don't think we've ever talked about it per se as principles, but we've kind of gotten into a rhythm when we've talked about our different goal areas of the ones that I came up with were 7 kind of guideposts that we use when we approach and making any zoning changes. And, you know, first is, you know, defining the issue. Is it clearly understood and can it be explained? You know, second, does it relate back to the master plan goals and strategies for land use and housing? Is it an issue that the permitting boards or the building inspector would like addressed? Is it a pressing issue? And in this case, is it a pressing issue, or could the changes wait to be incorporated into a broader comprehensive zoning redraft? Is it in alignment with statutory provisions or case law? Is it common practice? And by that sort of ties to some of the benchmarking we've done, where in many cases we found that Cohasset is at, you know, usually at the de minimis end of the spectrum in terms of regulations. And then, you know, whether the change has been benchmarked, researched, and undergone legal review. So I think it's helpful, again, to set the stage that we think about these things relative to each change. So I don't know if I missed anything or whether I've mischaracterized.
No, I would spend time, but not here today, but
Yeah.
tomorrow and with the other boards, particularly on 5 and 6 and 7. I think those are critical because we are not trying to invent the wheel here. We're trying to bring ourselves into conformance, and have been an outlier for for decades, and has not benefited Cohasset. So I think if you could stress 5, 6, and of course, benchmark research and legal review is always critical.
Yeah.
Always. But that's just what I do. I mean, they're all important. I'm glad, you know, I'm glad you came up with these. Hats off.
Well, I was just, Woody, I took your flow presentation, that little handout. I sort of took our conversations and kind of pulled it together.
Oh, this
Tom,
is mine. That's why I like it.
Yeah, you do like it.
Oh, if only I'd known.
I just like Woody, I put some color around it, you know.
Come on. All right. All right.
Tom, any thoughts on this? Am I missing anything from your perspective?
My apologies. I'm not completely paying it full attention here because I got a zillion crises going on simultaneously. But no, I'm sure everything you've been doing with this and explaining to me was fine.
Okay. All right. You'll holler if I do anything that's not.
And you know, and I don't think we need to overly tailor things to some potential opposition, and you know, just
we'll come to it, Tom. But it's out there.
Worry about the questions and the nitpicking and the wordsmithing that Clark will do, and we'll be fine on getting through the hearing. No, I'm not kidding. I mean, I don't say that funny. He's the one that's going to be the most engaged. He's the one that'll ask the most questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good point. Good point.
You know. So.
Yeah. No, I just.
We'll see who shows.
Chuckled a little bit because it is the Clark Brewer I know. So.
All right. So we'll do this slide, master plan, then we'll do the zoning act in terms of what the purpose of zoning is, what our kind of principles are in terms of making changes. And then I just want to touch briefly for the community and to remind our planning board that, it has been 35 years. So the fact that we are doing zoning changes is in part a result of the fact that we haven't really looked at this comprehensively. And to add on top of that, we have a master plan. So I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I think it's just important to acknowledge, in part because sometimes we make choices to do stuff now as it relates to special town meeting versus holding them to the more comprehensive zoning redraft, like we did with some of the residential definitions. We didn't do the table of area regulation changes. We've kind of bifurcated it into definitions now and table of area regulation changes.
Why don't you, in the last sentence on a more regular cycle, really speak to the fact that it's recommended, and you could do a lot of this verbally, every 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And our bylaws have been 35 years, but most of the area dimensions have been actually 52 years since 1969.
Yep.
So you don't have to put all that little trivia in, but 35 years is a little light on what we're actually facing. But the more important thing is it should be done every 8 to 10 years, and we haven't.
Yeah. I had the same thing. I'll cover that in comments. I'll put that context. But I like the fact that it's 8 to 10 years for the whole bylaws themselves. And then if you look at us, it's been 52 years since somebody's looked at the area.
An anecdote that I think I know I relayed to the group, but months ago when I talked to the planner on the planning board in Milton and said, I'd like to get a copy of their bylaws and look them over. She said, no, you don't want to look at ours. She said, they're almost 10 years old. And she said, they're out of date. And I thought, wow, well, maybe I'll just shut up and change the topic because anyway,
yeah,
it's standard practice and we just haven't followed it.
Exactly. All right. We'll share those anecdotes.
Maybe.
Well, and but I think it's important because as Tom alluded to, in many cases, we're talking to Clark Brewer tomorrow night. And it was Clark that specifically made the comment when we previewed this in August around why are you doing zoning in the fall? And the rebuttal that Tom and I came back with is we should be doing zoning all the time now because we're 35 years behind on doing zoning work. So there isn't a rule against doing it in the fall. And frankly, we need to sort of pick up the pace in terms of making changes if we're going to really follow through in terms of updating our bylaws. So that with that, then I would hop into opening the public hearing for zoning working group 1. And maybe just to kind of give you some context, Cassie, you shared your phone call that you got from a person in the community that's concerned about the change here. Just to be clear, my understanding is that once the public hearing is advertised and the date is set, you cannot file for a building permit for a lot that qualifies for 8.3 B or C. So we have frozen a building permit. We have not frozen, if I understand this correctly, Tom, a perimeter plan, a subdivision plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Or an A&R, because those are not frozen until the annual town meeting date. And so there is a period of time between now and December 13th where people could proceed forward with perimeter subdivision or other plans to try and lock in zoning that's to their benefit.
Was this opposition circulated to us already?
That opposition was not circulated to you.
Is it coming from an attorney? Anybody know?
So the second one, so Woody, I want you to share your conversation with Richard Henderson, which is a second conversation around concerns.
Yeah, Richard, and I've actually had two, one from an architect and one from Richard. And Richard, maybe 3 months ago, in chatting told me he thought this bylaw was, but this is not for attribution. This is just a conversation, but he
Yeah.
thought this bylaw was a
Well,
real,
he wrote a detailed letter about it not too long ago.
well, he thought this bylaw was a real problem, blah, blah, blah. And now he's had 3 different landowners come to him and then ask him for either advice or representation. I'm not sure. And he came up with the, you know, the little old lady who's going to say, I've counted on this, developing this lot all my life. My father left it to me in 1940 or some damn thing. And, you know, the heart, you know, your heart's going to go pitter patter and the tears are going to well up. There is no doubt.
I'm in a Zoom
No doubt. I
meeting.
told Richard, I'm sure some of these people have this as a major personal asset, but if you look at who owns the land and how often they flip, they may be certainly in the minority, and we'll come to that in a moment or two.
Yeah. So a couple things that.
Sorry, Jen, you've got your hand up?
Yep.
Right. There's a couple things I just wanted to make note on, and that I too have been approached by both a lawyer and a developer for concerned for the same reason that they was asked, well, was it the date of the hearing? Is that the date that you posted? And I said, well, that's would be for the public hearing. Yes, those are the dates. And if they haven't filed anything for 8.2 or 3, then I don't think they could do anything. And she's the same thing. So I think we're going to have a decent amount of input. I know Steve Bjorklund today came and asked for everybody's name and address on this committee. He's, you know, a big developer. So I would expect, so, you know, you have all the answers in explaining it. And just 2 other things in the first slide, in the first number 1, there's just a letter missing, a word missing where it says existence or lawfully begun before the first public of notice. I think it's publication. Is that what you wanted?
The first publication of notice. Yes, 3rd line,
So
Third
first-
line.
2nd word.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem. So, and then just for past practice, I just wanted to mention that I too have had a conversation with Clark and also it's not just a Cohasset thing, but as we all know, all of our surrounding communities, basically special town meetings are or have been for financial reasons to clear up for the previous fiscal year and only when there are, you know, emergencies or things like that. But I do think that the response is that, well, also we haven't had a committee like Situate did 10 years ago or Hingham has done to address things within 35 years. The only way to fix it is if we start doing it now and do it at every town meeting because you only have a couple bites of the apple. So I think that it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That we have to continue, you know. So I just wanted to be forthcoming that they've, you know, they're coming in and they're complaining to me. So
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the intent of asking for our names and contact information of our board? Should we expect to be reached out to by that one individual?
I advise him. He's not very tech savvy, so I just said, you know, you can email me any questions and I'll forward to the board, to the committee.
Yeah.
But
This is pretty typical when an issue gets hot, Cassie, of people emailing the full committee their concerns. I would recommend that we designate one person to respond. Otherwise, we get into a problem where you get into open meeting law violations because everybody's responding back. So Woody, do you mind if we do get email?
I was hoping you'd nominate yourself.
Woody or Tom? Tom's on the phone. I think,
All right, sure.
again, I think it's more acknowledging the email and saying that the public hearing is on.
And neither agree nor disagree, but just say it'll all be present. Now, Peter had his hand up.
Yeah.
Are you volunteering?
No way.
No way.
In my experience as you know, chair of several committees, it's been, as far as I'm concerned, the rules are that nobody speaks for the committee except the chairperson.
So then
Because you'll get people, you know, you don't want to have members of the committee in the newspaper or something, with statements that are contrary to what the chair, what the committee.
Well, I recall that as well, now that you mention it.
We don't have a chair though, so.
Well, aren't you?
No, I am not. We're all equal. Haven't you felt that,
Oh,
love?
I can
Of this
see- I
working
can-
group? you
This
mean?
working group, there's no chair of the working group, so.
Cassie, I can see a vote coming up later in this presentation.
Oh, in that case, I'm signing off.
No, no.
Yeah, right.
Peter, you're exempt, we'll exempt you, okay.
Last one standing.
Again, I agree. If we had a chair, it would go to the chair. That's kind of why I was asking Woody to take that on for us, was just reply back, thanking them, acknowledging and redirecting them to the public hearing.
I'm happy to do that. I just-
More importantly, everybody else should not.
Correct. So, yes, thank you. That was also the other piece, very important piece of the message, which is everybody else just remains silent. So Tom, you found the,
Just tell them you have to talk to the chair, whatever.
yeah,
You don't comment on it.
You've got a lot here, Katie. One is a topic unto itself. 2 and 3 belong together. But I just don't,
I
well,
guess,
let's see how it goes. Let's see what the group thinks after they hear the whole thing, and maybe we can go back and take a look at either a couple of other logical breaks, or should we leave it as is?
so Carolyn Murray's recommendation was that we start the conversation with the community around making sure the community understands that there are some very broad statutory protections under 40A Section 6 that are in our bylaws and will remain in our bylaws and are not touched by the amendment that we're proposing.
Yeah.
And it sort of splits into two, oh my, I'm just got a call from Clark Brewer on my phone. I'm gonna ignore that. We've got two types of lots or parcels that are being impacted. 2 and 3, which relate to undeveloped lots, and 1, which relates to developed lots. And as it relates to developed lots where there's a structure or use in lawful existence prior to the proposed change, that has protections under 40A Section 6. And those protections for pre-existing structures or uses are in perpetuity, assuming there's no abandonment of the use or abandonment of the structure. So as it relates to single lots that are developed, this is a very strong protection for pre-existing non-conforming structures and lots. Would you amend that?
No, absolutely. But when we come to the table, I'd like to make a couple of changes, because people should understand there are 2,200 roughly lots in this town,
Yep.
of which 200 are undeveloped. Okay,
Yep.
10%, of which half are legally conforming lots. So only 5% of all lots in town have some questionable issue. Not all of them are illegal or whatever, don't comply, but that's just the first rough cut. So people really should understand, we're not talking about a wholesale change to individuals or to neighborhoods. We're talking about what happens to the 5% of undeveloped lots in this town.
Yeah. So
The
I think
10%.
that's great context. I mean, we can say that there's, I can get the exact number, but let's say there's 2,200 lots or parcels in town, of which of the developed ones, what was our figure, Cassie? Like 67% or something like that are non-conforming in size.
It sounds right. I can pull it up right now if you want.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, I think context here at the
Yeah.
highest levels would be useful to understand that we are a town of non-conforming houses and lots anyway.
Yeah.
And so we're not making any changes to those that exist or pre-exist.
Yep.
And in
Okay.
fact, a lot of half of our undeveloped lots are protected. just by virtue of their area and things. And so now we have to look at the remaining 5%. And when you whittle it down, we're talking, to single numbers, 1-2% of all lots in town.
Yeah, I think that's a great context. If you start with, there's two buckets of parcels in town. There's the developed, of which there's 2,200, 67% of them are non-conforming in size. And those, because they have pre-existing structures, are protected under the first part of 40A Section 6, structural
Right.
use is lawfully in existence. And then the other bucket is the 210 undeveloped residential parcels, of which, of the 210, only 101 are non-conforming in size.
Right, and some of those are protected and some of those aren't, so we will get to it. But,
Yeah,
I think by the time you kind of finish up, as I say, you're gonna be dealing with 1 or 2% of all lots in Cohasset.
do you think I
You want
should
me to-
move?
I was gonna say, do you want me to pull that to get that exact figure too of the undeveloped, non-conforming?
It's right here. Maybe I pull this slide up.
Yeah, if given it isn't on here, but I thought it should be, if we, for each of these columns,
Mhm.
you have 97 undeveloped lots out of how many lots in town
Yeah,
are conforming, so on and so forth. I mean, trouble is we don't know, the column, if they're numbered 6, and we don't know 7 because we don't know 5, but that's our job. And these aren't additive, they're subtractive. So we start with 75, we end up with 55, maybe 46, of which I just don't have a number yet.
But that's your 75, right, Katie?
So yeah, so here's the.
I'll let Katie go through and stop. I'll stop.
It's okay. I like the idea of pulling the slide up and just again, to give context. I think, Woody, your point is the bigger context is that this is 210 undeveloped residential parcels that are in land use code 130, 131, and 132 out of 2,200 residential parcels, RA, RB, and RC. Of those 210, there are 12 lots that are outside RA, RB, and RC, which we excluded for a minute, which got us down to 198. Of that 198, 97 are already conforming as of right, at least as it relates to size. I can't comment on frontage, I can't comment on the other aspects of the table of area dimensions, but 97 of them are greater than 18,000 for RA, 35,000 for RB, and 60,000 for RC. Of that 198, 101 are non-conforming in terms of size. Of that 101, 26 actually don't qualify for any single lot exemption, even under state law, because they're less than 5,000 square feet small. And so you're left remaining with 75 lots that could qualify for, or should qualify for, protection under 40A Section 6.
Yeah, and you could phrase it as some proportion of.
Yes.
We don't know sitting here, and if it looks like it's important, I'll go back to the grindstone and start.
Good Lord. I mean, that, so.
No, but some of them I can tell by virtue of their ownership.
Yeah.
Some of these are accumulated by multimillionaires to provide them protection. And a friend, I told Katie, has acquired such a lot here to give his family a dock on Bailey's Creek. He's not going to sell that damn thing. It's undevelopable anyway. So, I mean, I could do that without doing any research at the Registry of Deeds.
Yeah.
Again, whittling down is probably 30 or 40. I mean, that's a pain in the ass, but it's manageable.
I mean,
But wait a
so-
minute, go back to that. Why
I
do you-
will. I just want to show people the detail that Woody has begun. So of this the 75 that are truly at the heart of the issue here in terms of, so first off, Cassie, do you really think that people understand that we're talking about 75 parcels here?
Well, it sounds like a
I think
big
the
number.
majority of the
until-
people in opposition are going to be probably some of that cohort of 75.
No, I hear you. I want you know, and that's okay. Just for context, it's 75 parcels out of, 2,200 that we're talking about.
Yep.
The other really interesting thing in terms of like analyzing this from like the old lady perspective, here are the portion, I think it's 52 that are in RB. If you actually look, here are all the owners. If you actually go down and you look at the date last sold, I mean, the fascinating thing is that most of these lots have turned over in the last 20 years. I mean, there are very few. It's like
So
one,
what's
two,
yellow
yes,
before what date, Katie? Sorry to interrupt you.
yellow is just old. See, there's not a date in mind, but I guess my point is that if it was a little old lady, she would have held on to this from her dad.
Mm.
And so if you look at the dates that these have changed,
Unless someone's trying to retire at the age of 40.
I'm sorry?
Unless someone's trying to retire at the age of 40 and that's what they meant.
And they have 300,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you just look at the turnover and
That's interesting. I
majority of
hadn't thought of it that way. They are, yeah.
No,
again,
I
I
totally
wouldn't
agree.
trot this out in public. So here's the undersized lot. Sorry, the top section are actually lots that are conforming size. If I actually get down to the section of undersized lots for RB, I mean, look at the turnover. There's one from 78. The rest have turned over in the last, 10 to 20 years. There's very few that are dating back.
It'll be interesting to see if those 7 that are trying to get submitted before special town meeting are the ones in yellow.
I bet it's more related to ownership than anything else. If I knew who the owner
Jen,
was.
do you have any access to what maybe, or Cassie, do you? Who might
No,
be
he
submitted?
just said I'm working on submitting 7 like A&R subdivision plans.
Say that, well, the other thing that not everybody recognizes here, and I don't want to make it, but if you look at what's undersized, you will see, God bless him, Glenn Pratt, but there's a J. Keene in the middle.
Mhm.
John Keene owns Keene Associates. He's acquired 5 or 6 of these small parcels. They may be big to us. They're really small to him. He owns a big chunk of land. He wants to be protected. I know he has no, I mean, you know what I mean? The land isn't what he makes in dividends in a day. Sarah Meehan is, her husband owns Mason, WB Mason. She owns Granite Electric. They've bought 6 houses.
Well,
in the
that's funny. That's
neighborhood.
actually the daughter.
Okay,
20.
but okay. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
All right, well, however they're putting it and what name, they own 6 houses or bought 6 houses in 4 years.
The other thing that's not making sense to me about the comment that was passed along to you, Cassie, is that the lots that are at risk, these 75, are undersized. So why would you be doing an A&R or a subdivision? Because that would just create a smaller non-conforming lot, which you can't do.
They could change lot lines and merge them to make them conforming.
What?
Yeah,
And they can do
maybe.
that
Yeah,
after.
I assumed it
Yeah.
was more like splitting the lot and selling it.
Yeah, and if it's
Just
not,
for their
nobody's gonna buy it though, if it's not.
It has to have enough land to result
Build.
in 2 or more buildable lots. So
Yeah.
you're talking at 70,000 is the cutoff here, is the smallest subdivision you can.
Hey guys, sorry, I just have
Okay.
to, run and do a quick errand for my son and I'll be back on in like
Okay,
20 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay,
No.
I have an emergency at my daughter's school. She's fine. I just have to make a quick phone call.
boy,
Yeah.
Bruce.
And,
Oh.
but I'm gonna come
luck,
back,
Jen.
but thank you. She's fine. She's just panicking. Anxiety, fun. The one thing I wanted to do is jump on back about the Dia Blaine diagram that you have up. And so
We
I'll,
do? Oh, okay.
yeah, I want to comment that, but let me make this quick phone call and I'll come back.
Sure, all right.
All right.
You know, the problem is, not Cassie, Katie.
Mhm.
We could get lost in the forest here. You know, we couldn't see the forest for all the trees. We have to be careful that
Yep.
we not, in order to refute somebody's argument, leapfrog into a spreadsheet that has 100 and some odd
Yep.
lots with 12 different factors. Everybody will get lost.
No, I 100% agree
my
with you.
Fear.
And as a strategy, if there's a public comment about a specific parcel or a specific land situation, my recommendation is that we don't attempt to analyze it for the community member on the spot. That's not fair to us. I'm not a lawyer. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, we go back to the facts of 8.3B and 8.3C are only affecting undeveloped lots who are non-conforming in size, who have previously registered a plan of land. And that's 75 lots in town. And so if you're not in that 75 lots, I'm not sure why I mean, I wouldn't say this directly, but I guess I'm not sure why you're here talking to me. Like, Cassie's example makes zero sense to me.
Well, they may not understand the law fully, you know, so maybe
Right.
that's why they're concerned. Yeah, why are they here? Well, they're here because they don't understand it.
Yeah, perhaps.
I mean, but just the 75 in my handy little calculator, I mean, that's 3% or 3.4% of all lots in town.
Right.
And so now we're trying to figure out, of the 3% plus or minus, how many of them are eligible for protection
Right.
by the state, and how many of them are not eligible for protection by the state.
And the analysis of the 75, which Woody has not completed here, would require two things. One is understanding when the lots were registered with the Norfolk County of Deeds, which is like a records check for each of them. And second, you have to understand the lot's ownership and the lot's ownership relative to adjoining lots, because
At the time of registration.
well, at the time of registration and now.
And now, yes.
And
Oh, that's an important point. Okay, go ahead.
It is at the time of registration, but it's actually equally important now, because if at some point common ownership came to be with an adjoining lot, then my understanding is that you would be subject to merger.
Yeah, town council has given us that advice. So there are two ways common ownership affects us. The first of which was it eligible to begin with because of common when it was registered, and did its ownership change so it switched from single to common to dual or triple.
Correct. Exactly. To adjoining lots.
In which case it loses its exemption. And our bylaw language isn't entirely precise.
Exactly.
Or as precise as it should be, but that's another matter.
So the thought process is, from what I'm hearing from the group, is let's start with the context here. And the context, and I can even back this up one level from where we're at here in terms of the 210 or 198 that are in RB, RA, and RC. Let's start with how many parcels there are in town, the number of non-conforming, and then the number of non-conforming undeveloped parcels, because that really ties into the context here, which is there's two types of protections. One for, and maybe, I guess I see where you're getting at, Woody. Like maybe we tie this here, section 1 for structures lawfully in existence, to the 2,200 parcels of which 67% are non-conforming lot sizes. Like that's directly tied.
Right.
Okay. And then 2 and 3 relate directly to the 101 undeveloped parcels. And under state law, if it's an undeveloped lot not held in common ownership, that is non-conforming in size that of at least 5,000 square feet and 50 feet of frontage, then you have protection in perpetuity. Which may be the case of many of the people that are coming forward. If it's not held in common ownership, we're not deleting that protection. You have it already under 40A, section 6.
And that is our 8.3.A. Although again, A doesn't, A only says go back and read state law, but
Yes.
nevertheless.
Exactly.
Yeah, so if you had number 1 up here,
Yeah.
then you dealt with just what's the order of magnitude that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And now there are 2 kinds of exemptions going on. Well, there are exemptions going on, and here's what they are. And you're coming down to really small numbers.
Yeah.
So maybe this follows a table of,
Yes.
a head count. I don't know.
Yeah, I like the idea. I like the idea of starting first with non-conforming lots with structures and dealing with that first, and then dealing with non-conforming undeveloped lots and tying it to this table here and to these 2 statutes at the bottom, 2 and 3. If there's common ownership on an undeveloped, if there's not common ownership on an undeveloped lot, then you have protection in perpetuity. If there is common ownership with an adjoining lot held in common ownership, you have zoning protection from the date of the change, the effective date of the change, for 5 years. And what our 8.3b does is basically overrules this portion of state law and says that for undeveloped lots that are held in common ownership, you have that protection to hold them separately and develop them separately in perpetuity. So this is where 8.3 B really comes into play. We are not touching in our changes state protections under section 1 here of 40A or section 2. The only thing that we are touching is undeveloped adjoining lots held in common ownership. And that's what I was trying to get at with this slide again, was that, one from the previous slide is already in our zoning bylaws in 8.2. Under 8.3, 8.3A, that's where 2 and 3 come into play. It's just a reference to 40A section 6. Where we begin to differ in our bylaws is 8.3B and 8.3C, where for undeveloped lots that are held in common ownership, that we extend that in perpetuity versus having a 5-year zoning freeze. And then in 8.3C, what our zoning bylaws land out doing is extending the protection for definitive subdivision plans in perpetuity versus what's under state law, which is a zoning freeze of 8 years as defined in 8.4. So when you look at our zoning bylaws as constructed today, 8.2, 8.3A, 8.4, 8.5 all conform directly to Mass General Law statutory protections. Where we have gone astray is in the 2 unique provisions of 8.3B and C, where we have significantly, and by significantly, I mean in perpetuity, extended protections for undeveloped lots that are held in common ownership and subdivision plans for undeveloped lots.
Yeah, in other words, you have a subdivision plan that was never executed.
Right.
And now somebody comes forth with a 60-year-old piece of paper.
Ding, ding, a la Windy Hill, where you had a subdivision plan from 1966 that had 2 undeveloped lots that at the time in 66 were conforming as they were greater than 20,000 square feet, but flash forward 50 years, they had protection under 8.3C, and they were able to develop 2 lots instead of 1 conforming lot.
Yeah,
relative to RB.
the state says 1 lot is fine.
Yep. And we under 8.3C have allowed for that protection for that filed subdivision in perpetuity. The second is the example related to 8.3B, which is, again, 3 lots were on Diab Lane were registered in 53, 55, and 57. They were held in common ownership since the 1970s, but undeveloped. With the deletion of 8.3B, we, like under state law, would require merger for zoning purposes, resulting in 1 conforming lot for development versus 3 lots for development as preserved in our unique provision. in our
Katie,
zoning.
one thing in your box there.
Yeah.
3 undersized undeveloped lots. Before you get to registered, why don't you say numbers 3, 9, and 15? I think it is, because people might get confused about 2 diab or 10 diab or 30, and gee, that looks like a big lot. You know what I mean? If you just
Yeah.
focus them on this little strip there,
Yep.
it may just make it a little easier for you.
Yep. Okay.
Anyway,
Going back to the 3 statute
Yeah.
slide.
This one, Peter?
No, the next, the first, the one up.
Yep.
Yeah, that one. The box on the first, number 1, in perpetuity, no abandonment. Abandonment is spelled wrong.
Oh.
okay.
Yep. All right.
Just to tidy things up.
Yep.
Good.
All right. Help me out, Peter, how I spell abandonment.
ABAD, abandon, ABANOD.
I think you got it.
ABANDONMENT, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you got it.
There you go. All right, sorry. When it doesn't give me a squiggly red line, I'm lost, guys. There's one thing that modern technology helped with my poor spelling. Okay. All right. So from a flow perspective, I like this flow better in that we'll start with the easiest, which is existing structures on non-conforming lots, address that, the number of them in town, and the fact that that protection remains. Then we'll move
Katie,
on.
sorry, one other
Yep.
interruption for you on number
Yep.
1, and this is not for the slide, but tuck it away in your head. A structure can also be a barn or a shed, and some of these are undeveloped lots that we call undeveloped. In fact, contain some outbuilding.
Yeah.
And if it comes up, but I got a barn that I've always used. Now you can't change the barn to a house. You know, you can only have one, but you can. They also are protected. Barns, sheds, etc. So if
Yeah.
somebody brings that up as an example, just say no, you're okay.
Yeah.
It says structures. It doesn't say dwellings. Don't bring it up unless you have to.
Yeah.
It's a distraction, but okay.
Okay. Well, that goes to the use, right? Which is the use is not for a substantially different purpose, a barn versus a house.
Yes.
Use. Gotcha.
But,
Okay.
but what you have there is a barn, a shed, or whatever, a garage,
Is protected
okay.
as a barn, as a
protected.
house.
even if it's on another lot.
Yep. Okay. So I can change the flow here. So the idea was in this to kind of educate people about 40A Section 6 and explain the order of magnitude in terms of what was being impacted, which really, as we boil it down, is 75 parcels here in town.
Yeah, some portion of 75 parcels.
Yep, some portion of 75 parcels, because we don't know which have adjoining lots in common ownership. Okay.
Yep.
Then we get into 2 examples. I have no idea. I mean, listen, this Windy Hill one is already left the barn. Like this is already.
That's a good one. I
That's
don't know if I'd get into Diab Lane because it's going to come before us.
I'm concerned about that, right?
Okay,
I would take it out only because John is dealing with it as we speak, and I think it could affect the town's legal standing.
okay.
For a couple reasons, like 15 isn't owned by 3 and 9 anymore, and they're not all the same ownership anymore. There's a couple different things. So, I mean, it's up to you. I was just gonna ask John what he thought, if, he had concern about bringing it up publicly where
You
they're,
know, one thing, Katie, I'm not sure we asked Carolyn. We know that if lots are in common ownership when the land is registered, they, have to jump through a couple of hurdles. If they become owned and are owned today in common ownership, they lose that exemption. What if they were in single, not to be picky, single ownership, became in common ownership and then reverted to single ownership because that common owner sold them off? I don't know if the exemptions revert. I don't think so. I think once you've lost an exemption, you've lost it, but I'm not the lawyer.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I bet she could answer it pretty quickly,
Yeah,
probably top of the head.
yeah. The one thing we did learn from Caroline, not that I'm gonna raise this tomorrow, is there, in terms of the ownership, underlying ownership changing, she did reference the fact that there is recourse by the town to look, and what is that term called, Woody? I'm looking for it right now.
Infelicitous, infectious invalidity.
Infectious invalidity, so.
Tom, you know that. You're a lawyer.
Do,
Tell us about it.
quickly. Really? Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
No.
You or Katie, I have a hard time pronouncing it.
I don't think we have to go into it, but basically, if an owner is trying to hide the common ownership.
Yeah,
there is this concept.
by use of realty trusts and other things to try to hide who's really in control of the property.
Yeah.
That's a common thing that would be used to try to get around this.
Yeah.
But in the prior common ownership infects this attempted switch of ownership into realty trusts.
Yeah, so I guess, Tom, you're saying that you would lose that exemption even if you pretended you had individual ownership.
Yeah, I think the issue of it's like in many things in law, like taxes and Medicaid planning, it's ownership and control. And I think, if you still put title in the name of a realty trust, but you are the effective controller or owner of that property, then there's been no change.
Okay, and that's
And
again,
especially when realty trusts are owned, the beneficiary of the trust is the true owner, not the trustee. And so, a lot of times that's just the owner. I mean, using the realty trust to hide ownership to the general public.
Well, it is interesting. When I was doing my analysis, and I didn't much care about 300,000 square foot lots, but there are a few trusts set up that the mailing address is a real live person on Jerusalem Road or whatever. So you can pretty much figure out that if the taxes are being mailed to that person's house, they're probably involved. But at any rate, I think, Katie, we could just confirm that. But again, we just have to say, look, it's I don't
So
know.
Jen, if John doesn't want us to use Diab Lane, I won't. I don't have an easy substitute for it in my back pocket, but I think we can sort of maybe we just use one example, which is Windy Hill, which kind of applies for both Diab. I mean, it's the same concept for B and C.
my gut tells me that this is not going to go away. And
Yep.
I just don't know if it's going to put us in the best position should an appeal arise.
Yeah, I think all we have to, well, not all, but I think what we have to do is say, there are many such examples.
Yeah.
And they're all over town, and many of these parcels have been accumulated or acquired. And that's really what our concern is, not, because almost everybody else is protected, but I don't know.
Maybe I just
I would
call
stay
this,
with this.
why don't I just call it land use example and we'll use Windy Hill since it's already
Yeah.
through, and I'll delete this example.
Yeah, we have the same problem in Black Horse Lane, but that's probably going to be litigated, so we want to stay away from that.
Okay,
And God knows that Cedar Ocean Ledge or whatever the hell it is.
yep,
John's put a temporary moratorium on that specifically, I believe.
yep.
And so a lot of this stuff is, I don't want to scare people, but a lot of this stuff is bubbling its way through the permitting board process.
Yep. All right, so I'll just genericize this and call it a land use land use example,
Of which there are many.
of which there are many. Okay.
Well, why don't you, okay, good.
Anyway,
Freeze it down.
okay. All right. This example here, I don't want to, I only included it so that people kind of could see it as our group. Again, I don't want to include this in our deck because it's way too complicated, but it was basically the concept that if you had two lots that were adjoining and in common ownership, and one of them was in an RB district and was of conforming size, and you had a second undersized lot, if we deleted 8.3b and the sum total of them was 70,000, then you could potentially reconfigure lot lines and create a second buildable lot. In the case that your second lot, the undeveloped lot, which is subject to 8.3b, was only 15,000 in this example, the sum total of the two lots, once they were required to merge under common ownership, would be 65,000. You would be left with a developed lot and a not buildable lot in this example, because you couldn't merge even the two of them and get to 65,000 and subdivide into 70. So in this case, yes, this lot would be deemed unbuildable. Now, that doesn't delete the value of this lot. I mean, at some level, Lot D has value. It could be merged with the two and you would sell a larger parcel in the end when you wanted to from a landowner perspective. But no, it would not be a buildable lot. And I think that's sort of the crux of the conversation with some folks, is that, yeah, your 15,000 square foot lot is going to be either required to be merged, or if you can, you're going to have to split the lots and have them both be conforming in size.
Katie, while you're on this slide, and you're going to take it out, but the second to last line.
Yep.
Contained at not least, least, L-E-A-S-T.
Okay.
And the heading is, you've got elimination.
Yeah. Guys are good. I'm sorry, where's the lease down?
Give me kind of a quiz for the audience.
Second to last line. But
Contained,
contained
yeah.
at least, not least.
Oh, yeah, got it. Sorry. All right. I'll clean them up at least. Okay. All right. So I'm going to delete this from the deck.
Whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, this is why there is opposition, just so we're clear. There will be lots that are deemed not buildable as a result of this. I don't know how many out of the 75, but there will be some.
And again, I don't think it's worth being kind of cutesy or snarky, but there's a reason why, if these lots were registered before 1955 and they've never been developed, I mean, that's 65 years, 66 years. There's a reason, and the reason was it was never economic to develop these. It wasn't that somebody enjoyed paying taxes and sitting on a $500,000 asset.
Yep.
But I mean,
I don't have
that's
a
not our
problem.
point.
Well, but I don't have a problem making it if the opportunity presented itself. I mean, people, well, it's an unfortunate thing we say in the law. You sit on your rights, you lose them. It's the common legal outcome and legal principle. So I won't, I'm gonna be quiet during the whole thing.
This would be right down your wheelhouse, but we're begging you not to,
I'm not gonna
not
say,
to
I'm
attack the person.
not gonna say the same thing. I'm only gonna admonish my colleagues on the board if they say something stupid.
Oh, well, that'll keep you.
Let's remember we won't. So, this to me was the most important
Okay.
slide out of all of it, which is like, why are we doing this? And the point number one was that statutory protections are already in place that provide significant safeguards. That's where we sort of start this conversation with the community. The second point is that, of the 20 plus communities that we benchmark, no other town provides protection for non-conforming lots above and beyond what is statutorily required. Third point, which is just like, guys, like you can't complain about, too many houses and big houses on small lots without acknowledging that, new homes built after 2000 are 47% larger than homes built in the previous century. And 70% of the homes undergoing large home review by the planning board are on non-conforming lots. And the scale of homes relative to lot size is an issue. It was raised by the community during the master plan process. And part of this conundrum that we have is that people are building larger homes by desire, but because we are a community of non-conforming lots, we have this conflict, and 8.3b and 8.3c allow what would have been lots that would have had to either merge or change zoning under statutory law to persist in a non-conforming lot size. And so from a land use perspective, we have to make a decision around what's more important to us. And the recommendation of the zoning bylaw working group is to address the land use issues that are being articulated in this third bullet point. Point number 4.
This is great. This
Yeah.
is great. On number 4 bullet,
Yep.
I would, in one or two places, substitute undersized for non-conforming.
Okay.
Second line, and we're actually after the state's long-established merger doctrine for undersized lots. I mean, non-conforming people may say, what the hell does that mean? Is it, but an undersized, I think they can get that conceptually. It's a small lot. You don't have to define, but if you just say undersized lots, and in both places, long-established merger doctrine for undersized lots, or whatever.
You got 2 lots now.
Oh, thank you.
I just think undersized has a little more punch.
Yeah, no, I hear
I
you.
agree. I agree.
It's more colloquial.
Is that, am I seeing things, or do you have some of the lines bolded?
I do. Mostly to help me, but if it's annoying, I can.
Well, no, I just, I didn't know whether it was meaningful or, not.
It was meaningful just because it kind of highlighted the key phrases.
Okay.
And then the second, but separate, maybe it's even a separate point. But the fact that because we're allowing under 8.3b and 8.3c these protections to persist in perpetuity, this.
Can I recommend something here?
Yeah.
It sounds like we're being very parochial here.
Okay.
To occur with almost no oversight from the planning board. We want to have control, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
I think if you lead with the conflicts with the state's long-established merger doctrine, blah, 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 as the lead-in, and just say something that conflicts, causes problems at the planning board. See
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It just changes the perspective a little bit. Doesn't sound like we're changing the rules to make it easier for us, kind of thing.
That's a very good point. Yeah, and the more we can cite, I mean, I don't know, people may not like state law, but in fact, we're not inventing the wheel here. Where we're going back, if you will, to conform to perfectly, to conform to state laws that 350 towns find perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I think it's better when you lead with that. That way it establishes the fact,
Yeah,
that it's state law we're talking about here, folks.
yeah, it's state law, and oh, by the way, it's state law has been sufficient for majority of other communities in terms of protections.
it's the vast majority. I am sure
It's-
statistically, there are 2 or 3 towns out there that we have not identified that have something similar, but the last one we could identify was Orleans in the Cape, which dropped it in 1971, which is 50 years ago. I mean, that's the only one that even was in existence that we've been able to uncover. That's trivia that people don't need to know, but
Yep.
the board should know that we have really genuinely tried to find examples.
Yeah. And in that paragraph, though, you say merger doctrine for undersized lots, it allows for development with diminished oversight or
No oversight.
no oversight,
No
right?
oversight, simpler, no oversight. No oversight from planning board or ZBA.
I think that's,
That's cleaner. I like that. I like that flip in terms of like what it communicates. The last bullet point, Woody, I appreciate what you kind of teased out here. Basically, state law provides protections for only these undersized, non-conforming, undeveloped lots.
You're right. Okay. For
Or
dwellings.
single family and 2-family dwellings. But our intro to 8.3 expands it beyond just single family and 2-family dwellings to allow for other lawful buildings, which again.
But if we drop B and C, we could just leave. I mean, that doesn't hurt A. I don't think we could change it.
But we haven't proposed, I guess I have sort of 2 minds here, Woody. Like, one, it's really, I mean, it's important, but it's also kind of like small relative to the bigger points we're trying to make to the community. And we're not actually proposing the change. We're just complaining about the change,
okay.
the expansion. So I almost would delete this for now for the highlights reel for the planning board.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, in any case, the last bullet,
Yeah,
unlike state statutes which confine non-conforming lot protections to development of single. No, yes? Development, no.
And you probably don't want a statue of somebody. You probably want a statue.
Statute, yes.
And you could always use state law if it's easier for people. I mean, the planning board obviously is not going to be confused, but.
Right, yeah, that's better.
all right.
But again, if we're going to drop it, I mean, and if it does become problematic, we could always drop the other lawful buildings and some subsequent housekeeping. I mean, we're not going to have any, I doubt that we're going to have anybody trying to sneak a lawful, I don't know.
I mean, the reason we raised it was that because our intro to 8.3 expands it from single and 2-family to other
True.
law buildings, it allows for the opportunity, if we don't delete 8.3 B and C, for there to be development land use that is even unenvisioned under state law.
Oh, I see. You're saying that this is another
Justification.
lawful building could be a loophole.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that you want to get rid of lawful buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, we'll just say that's our recommendation.
Okay. Well, that's what we
I
haven't
mean,
done.
because you'll have to explain that. What's a lawful building to the, to the audience.
You have to have examples, and it's, as I said, it's garages, it's anything that's allowed either by special permit or as a matter of right. And there are a hell of a lot of structures in our bylaws that are allowed. It's could be a big laundry list. I mean, there are a lot of things that aren't allowed, but I don't know, a funeral home.
Well,
Lodging house.
I would get rid of the lawful,
Well, I guess, so The
Because
problem,
the definition of buildings is in several places, and, you know, if push comes to shove, you know, you won't be able to build something that isn't allowed by the tables.
the issue, guys, is that we're actually in our current draft, not recommending the change that you guys are discussing.
Ah.
You know, Peter, if we were silent on this and it looks like it's a problem, I'll bet you when we start to do a bigger overhaul top down, we can say there are some housekeeping measures. We've got some phrases, some words that we want to change.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
here's a laundry list, and I don't know.
I think my recommendation is that we delete this
Drop it.
because it's going to take more time to explain what we're getting at.
Yeah,
And
that's my feeling, is that, you know, the language there screams for explanation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good catch.
okay,
I certainly agree.
so we'll keep this, we're going to keep it really focused on the biggies in terms of like what
Yeah, if we get this through, I'll worry about somebody trying to expand a garage or a barn.
All right. Okay, so I like how we reorganized this. I think that we have to be prepared for quite a bit of community feedback on what we're proposing. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I come back to, you have a choice. You can either let it ride and continue to complain about feels overcrowded and can't handle more housing and balancing the scale of housing, or you can do something about it. And zoning is meant to impact the community in a beneficial way. And if people don't think that the deletion of this is beneficial, then fine. You know, I think from a strategy perspective, it'll be important to, you know, courteously, you know, address as many of the questions as we can that are coming from the community. My guess is that if people show in numbers, that the recommendation will be to continue the public hearing to the following week, and we can regroup as a committee and see if there's any changes we want to make. I don't think the only change I would make, to be honest, is to withdraw the amendment completely and go at it another time if we think we're going to lose at town meeting. But I'm not anywhere near there yet because we haven't made our case. And the only reason I say that is that we know that if we fail at town meeting, there's a 2-year moratorium before we can propose this again.
And then stand by, because every single one of these lots are going to be, they're going to be acquired. They're going to be acquired by developers simply on a speculative basis, even if they have no plans to develop them, but they will put something on paper. Hey, you know, I'm not a big fan of hackneyed illustrations, but somehow it sticks in my mind, these 2,200 lots and things cry out for a pie chart. I don't know, but by the time you get down to 45 lots out of 2,200, and you can do blow ups and things, then we can go to a table and say, look, keep in mind, we're dealing with 1%. It's literally 1 or 2% of all lots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a visual like that would be valuable. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna do this. We're gonna start the conversation here. And this is gonna be my pie chart. And then we're gonna have.
Then you could take a couple of wedges of that pie and put those numbers on a table, but at least you will, you know, visually they will have said, okay, my God, it's already down to 3%. Now, how much smaller is it going to get, you know, in terms of the impact?
Then I'm gonna deal with this. And that's where I bring in. This.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna deal with this, which is the smallest wedge, which is the 75. And then that pertains to these two. sections of 40A sections.
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay, I like that flow better. This is the big pie. Big pie of residential lots, developed and undeveloped. All right, done. Guys know I love doing charts. Thank you.
well, you're pretty damn good at it.
All right,
Okay, so we're gonna,
so I think we've got the flow down.
yeah,
Okay. Does anybody want to present this? Or do you want me to give it my best shot?
give it your best shot and don't over explain.
Okay.
If you hear me, I mean, let them maybe ask a question that you can dismiss or answer. I mean, you've got to obviously talk to these points you're making here. They're all
Yeah.
good. But I think there'll be a lot of what if the little old lady, or what if, you know, the barn on my property. Clark is filed before the zoning board, by the way, to subdivide his land.
He's already got a second lot. He's not subdividing.
Oh, that's right. He's already got a second to develop.
He has a second conforming lot that's land courted, but he has filed an application.
So that's a different matter, but
Yeah.
he's got a horse, sort of a horse in the race. I'm not sure that it really applies to this, but, or this applies to him, but
Katie, I had one other small edit.
Yeah.
On page 17. Or, you know,
Which one?
it's just a,
Is it in,
it's slide 17.
I moved around stuff, Jen, so you're gonna have to call out which slide.
Oh, okay, this one.
what's the
Okay.
heading?
This one, it says, push it, second bullet down should say parcel after 6 new definitions.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. How do people feel as a tactic about if we're gonna get a lot of what ifs, and I really don't feel confident trying to analyze what ifs on the fly. It's not fair. to
Right.
us. Do we want to say that we'll capture those what if questions and come back with a response? I mean, if they're easy, I think we can dismiss them, but the last thing I want to do is get into, debating Steve,
well, you can
Bjorkman's-
just say, we can, if you have a specific, then bring it up, but, we don't want to deal with hypotheticals.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And if there is a specific and it looks, I mean, we could always do a
And then you can say,
reality
well,
check on some of them.
yeah, and then we'll say, well, if you have something specific, we'll look at it and get back to you.
Yeah, but I guess is my job to analyze everybody's questions. Like I'm not going to spend my next friggin' week.
I
of
gotta
my life
tell you,
analyzing people's.
no, in the past, I got caught up in that quite a bit. Particularly, there was one select person who's no longer on the board who was the king of what ifs.
Yeah.
And bizarre, off the wall, never will happen in a gazillion year what ifs. It can trap you and then just divert your attention to stuff, and you'll say something you don't mean to say that somebody will take the wrong way.
That's why they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
exactly
I
why
mean,
they throw that at you.
I try to avoid it as much as possible. but-
Just ask them to be specific. Do you have a specific example?
Have them look,
And don't deal with the hypothetical.
have them look at their lot and apply the language as written, and they'll be able to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm
I
not.
don't think it's your job, Katie, at all.
And I go back to like the reason we're doing this is we're talking about 75 lots, and we're talking about a land use issue that the community either agrees is an issue or doesn't. And we're back to these principles of why are we doing this? There's statutory protections that are already in place.
Right.
All communities only use the statutory protections. Quasit is the only one that has these.
Well, this slide doesn't really say the community through surveys has has
Oh,
a
yeah.
problem with the bylaws as the existing bylaws. Just as a community desire.
Well, the master plan, I'll refer the master plan.
Repeat what they've already seen.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to repeat that one line that there's too much or something, feels overcrowded and can't handle more housing.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
all you
further-
need there.
For the master plan surveys, or however,
I'll
Yeah.
remind you,
you want to tie it to something official.
Yeah,
yes.
okay. All right. Yeah, I think we're better off sticking to the high level of like, ultimately, this is a policy decision. Like you can get caught up in analyzing the 75 lots, but ultimately, this is a policy conversation we're trying to have
Exactly.
with the community.
This is what the community has asked for. We're trying to respond to that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And, you guys are, we're all responsible to each other to stop each other from trying to answer what ifs. And so I don't know if we have a signal, it's like rubbing our ears, like, don't do that, stop speaking. So
It's like,
exactly, a big.
I'll sneeze. I'll
For
sneeze.
God's sake, stop.
No, no.
No, 1,000 times no.
Don't
let's
do
use,
that.
let's use Frank Costanza's Serenity Now.
Ah,
Yeah, air horn.
Futurama.
Exactly.
We'll just override you.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
That's right,
again,
Jen, mute. Yeah, you
I
can
will,
mute.
I can mute. I will be co-host, so I can mute.
yeah, if
Oh,
you,
cuckoo.
I don't know why
Whoops.
Katie just muted. I
That's
have
so
no
weird.
idea.
I don't, maybe it's her Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Jen,
Yeah.
you're the puppet master.
Yeah, I'll be in the background. And, oh, it's so weird. She's lost her camera.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, guys. I
Okay,
think
on.
onward. So the next is the second article, which is our residential zoning definitions. And this was kind of an easier one to attack in terms of like what we're trying to communicate. It goes back to sort of some fundamental concepts around making sure that in our zoning bylaws, we are definitionally making the distinction between what is a parcel and what is a lot, and what constitutes actually a buildable lot as defined by the SGC. And I put together the slide because it's helpful context, but it also feels kind of lecture-y. I don't know how to get around this because I feel like if we just jump into here's what we analyze and here's what we're doing, we're going to get the question why, but maybe not. So just to put a finer point on it, I don't love this slide, but I felt like it had some important information that I don't want to presume that the planning board or the community understands about what constitutes a buildable lot and why those component definitions are important to us as a community.
Right, do you need the third bullet?
Nope, probably not.
I'm just wondering.
No, I don't think so.
What we're really trying to do is bring our language into conformity with the state law, because frankly, so much case law, is modifying a 50-year-old zoning, chapter 40A, that language is important because they make the state.
We ought to just say that. That the residential zoning fund, that we're this bylaw change is being done to harmonize our bylaw language with the official state language.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's still pending before us, but we have another A&R on Black Horse Lane. So this kind of thing is fresh in the board's mind right now.
good.
Okay.
Because we really don't know what to call this way that goes in there, is whether it's a driveway or private way. Is it Black Horse Lane, which the developer thinks it is?
Okay.
So.
Right, but the name doesn't make it a public way or you know what I mean? Some of Black Horse Lane is public and some of it is not.
Right, and then the issue is adequacy, and these definitions are going to help us define what's an adequate way better
Right.
than what we have now. Right now, we're guessing case by case,
Yeah. And there's plenty of case law, court law that spells this out in great detail.
Yep.
Wow.
Sounds like they're doing some drilling right now on Windy Hill. I just drove by there. That's for the next.
You can, Katie, you can do the spell check later. Just it's the thought that matters.
Jennifer, can you make sure John knows they're drilling up there
Into harmony with state law.
Yeah.
with respect to the new land clearing bylaw?
Harmony with state law and case law.
Yeah, state and case laws or something. I mean, whatever the hell, and
Yeah.
state and case law.
Yeah, I'll tune this up, but I think maybe this is a simpler way to do it, something like this.
Yep.
Okay. And then we sort of show the principles below.
Yeah, because the more I think about both one that we've just gone through and two and so on and so forth, and even parts of three, it seemed people really can't argue for not conforming or coming into harmony with state law. That would be a hard position to take. I mean,
Yeah.
we're on high ground here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the bedrock that all of this supports all of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. It's back to this zoning principle that we're trying to zoning principle 5, zoning principle 6, and zoning principle 7. That's sort of the heart of what we're doing with our changes in this number 2. Okay, I like this a lot better. Thank you. I was feeling preachy when I was writing it last night, but I didn't know how to make it better. Okay, so I'll tune this up a little bit more, but that's the concept of, like, fundamentally, we're looking to bring our zoning definitions into harmony with state and case laws. And then,
On this one,
Yeah.
be met for building a new dwelling on a lot. For building a new dwelling.
okay,
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
okay. Thank you. Here, I'm counting on you. You could see that my cup of coffee at 8 o'clock last night was
Look, you got a lot more done than I would have.
It's a lot easier to proofread it than to do it, believe me.
Yeah,
And we appreciate all you do.
Oh, God.
thank you, guys.
No,
Okay.
We would be,
Did
I
you
would
guys
say
deem
nowhere. but-
adequacy? Did you guys deem adequacy on Black Horse Lane?
Did I see
No.
the what?
Oh, you didn't? I
Not
thought
that
you
I know
were,
of.
I didn't quite understand what you said. Did you
I was
guys
wondering
see-
at the planning board meeting, if
Mhm.
Tom and his board was deeming Black Horse Lane adequacy for the new A&R they put forth.
They withdrew it because we had a lot of questions.
I'm sorry, I had to step away. Did I miss, did we define practical access? Is that defined in state law?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but no, it is. It case law.
Case law.
Access is not covered in 81 at all, but there have been, you could write a book on the number of cases that have been heard and dealt with these issues. I mean, and there are pamphlets.
Yeah, no, I've read
that
all
the
those.
state puts out.
I've read all the A&R books, but I could just see someone saying, well, it's practical. That's practical access. I'm sure. it's
Well,
case law.
what practical access is, can you actually use it? Or, and we won't say this, but in the case of Howe Road, do you go up and over a rock cliff?
Right.
That's not practical access.
That's not practical access.
The state has ruled, for instance, that tidal lands are not practical access because it only has some periodic opportunity if you're in a special vehicle. But when the
Right.
tide is in, you can't access it.
Right. And there's that case law where there's on the highway and you can't get over the
The
The barrier.
all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's not practical access.
Right.
Yep.
That's-
So there are a lot of these examples that the state courts have ruled on. that
Okay.
can be lumped under practical access. I mean, if somebody really they could hire a lawyer, and if they want to research it, fine. But I mean, there are dozens of cases.
Right.
Okay, so this is slide number 1 is the intro as to why are we doing this? And what do we mean in terms of what are the elements of a buildable lot? Then this was sort of a tour de force of all the work that we've done to back up our recommendations, which is benchmarking of residential zoning, looking at 21+ towns, and the observation that, you know, Quasit, while not absolutely unique, is in many cases, its dimensions are on the de minimis side. Second was benchmarking access, the fact that we've looked at 2 towns' approaches to regulating what is considered adequate access, Plymouth and Wellesley, and then looking at what we've done relative to common driveways in terms of, again, looking at over 20 towns to understand what is common practice as it relates to common driveway standards. This is detail, but again, I wanted to show that we didn't come up with this, we didn't come up with these recommendations out of thin air, rather that we've done work in sort of 3 substantial areas, one related to residential zoning and definitions, a second related to adequate access, and the third related to a subset of access, which is common driveways. So that was sort of the thought behind that. I don't know if this slide is helpful or not, but I was trying to group the definitions into sort of 2 buckets. The top bucket are really definitions that are sort of pertinent and important relative to what is a parcel, sort of the basic access, the basic aspects of a plan of land, which is a parcel, its frontage, and street and way. And then there's a second set of definitions which we've grouped together that are related to lots and ultimately what becomes a buildable lot. And it's where we're deficient in our bylaws today and where we're looking to add in terms of new definitions is largely along the lines of what constitutes a buildable lot, i.e. the definition of a buildable lot, what constitutes legal frontage, what is a qualified way, as in distinction to a non-qualified or just a street or a way, and then what is considered adequate access. I don't know if this chart is helpful, but I did want to kind of organize these definitions weren't, I guess what I was trying to communicate, where these definitions were not randomly picked. We picked them because they centered around 2 concepts, lot and parcel. And in the case of lot, we were trying to build the statutory and case law definitions that would support a discussion for the permitting boards, but also our building inspectors around what constitutes a buildable lot. Helpful, not helpful, confusing?
I think it's really helpful. I wonder for everyone's attention span, can you use this slide as needed, like push it towards the back and pull it up if it comes up, if it's necessary, if you need it from like a defense perspective point of view.
Yeah.
Well, it's just so much extra detail. I wonder if.
I mean, I could jump from here. I could go from what are we trying to do here? What work have we done and the rationale for the proposed change? And then if I need to, I could jump here in terms of the visuals. That flow make more sense to you?
I love slide 14. It doesn't even do enough justice. I feel like everyone has done so much, but I love that slide. It's awesome.
And again, I'm not planning on going into each of these buckets, but rather just to allow us to say that we've done a bunch of work. Hey, Woody, what's up?
Oh, you're on mute, Woody.
Hey. Oh,
It's still muted.
You're still on mute, Wood.
is he?
Oh, there.
Now I'm unmuted, but Jen had muted me.
Oh.
And
I asked you to unmute. I didn't ask you to mute.
okay, well, anyway, I agree with Cassie, and under the first one there, we analyzed 24 towns.
Mm.
Ooh.
Well, because if you add it up, or 25, I know one town, but No, wait, 70, no, but it was 24 towns because I added Weston and a couple of others. It's not
Okay.
important. It's
You
not
don't need
important.
you don't need a dash between 20 and 4.
I thought any number over 9, you don't have to spell out.
Here, I'm fixing it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I might put the common driveway thing as it's powerful. It's a great illustration, and I might make it a separate
Okay.
follow-on to the first two
Okay.
as an example. Benchmark when we looked at common
Okay.
driveways, and this is true of frontage, you could say, or whatever. I mean, you don't want to get too controversial, but
Yeah.
you know, of almost everything.
Okay. It's an example of the depth of research that we've done.
Well, that and it's an example of us being an outlier.
Yeah. And
It's
perhaps-
not
Yeah.
how much work did we
It's an
do.
extreme example, yeah.
Okay.
I think, Katie, the apostrophe in towns and benchmarking adequate access, I think that apostrophe goes after S, but I could be wrong there.
Where is this?
Because it's ownership and plural, the benchmarking adequate access, to the right, the next box,
This one?
the next box to the right,
The orange.
analyzed in details 2 towns approaches.
Thank you.
And I think the apostrophe should be there, but I think it's
I
just,
think it should be too. It's approaches of the town.
so just after this.
Yeah,
Yeah, after the S.
towns plural. Yeah, S.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. So I
That's
like
great.
Woody's-
This stuff is great.
I'll take Woody's suggestion and move this to another slide. And
Where was the slide that you were saying that we were de minimis?
Black, number
Black.
1 here.
black.
Oh, yeah, you may want to just use that we're an outlier rather than de minimis. De minimis is, just kind of, we're making a judgment there.
Yeah, we're not going to dwell, for instance, Peter, but to your point on frontage, I think there was only 1 or maybe 2 other towns that have only a 50-foot frontage for every resident. So no other town does this. That's just another example.
Yeah.
But we're way off the chart. And I think that is what happens when you take 60 or 70 years to upgrade
yeah.
your bylaws.
Right. Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you went from a sleepy little town that nobody really,
Cared about or wanted
Came
to
to.
live here, you know.
yeah, and then to now it's a place to be.
Yep.
Katie, I know I just jumped in here, but I mean, is it worth putting the slide further up just to show our, it just harps on so many important points of how we got to where we are.
I'm not sure it really applies to single lot exemption, though.
Yeah,
Let me think about that, Cassie.
it just shows all of our analysis in one. Because that's, I mean, basically what we did first. We did the analysis and then we started diving into the amendments, but
Yeah.
Or you could reinforce, Cassie, when you get to here by saying, as you saw in single lot exemption, where we were the outlier, here too, in many, many respects, we are an outlier.
Yeah.
We're really out of step with the state and current practices.
Here, I have an idea.
Maybe you could just sort of, in other words, it gets reinforced as they see yet another example. I don't know.
I'm gonna do this. All right, I'm gonna do this. Or call out a statement like this at the top.
Oh, is that you, Cassie?
no, that's Katie.
Katie, your house is being, oh my God, are they fixing the
Oh,
bathroom?
no, that is my house. That's the back deck that Jen
Sounds like
and
somebody's
Jen and John
something
Howland just
down.
signed off on it. So yeah, it's going up. Sorry, I can mute.
No,
No worries.
no, don't mute. No, it's just, you know.
Thank you, Jen, for pushing that.
All right, I'll tune up this language, but something to the effect of reinforcing the fact that we're an outlier as we noted in single lot exemption. Here's the kind of research we've done to kind of back up a statement like that. And then we'll use the common driveways as a deep dive on exactly what we mean by outlier. Okay. And then we jump into, okay, with this as the backdrop, the fact that we want to move things to harmonize with state and case law. We've done a bunch of research. We know we're an outlier. Now we're making recommendations to change 10 of the definitions. And this kind of just summarizes what we're doing. And if need be, I can jump to a slide like this, Cassie, that kind of organizes it for people, but I'll try and stop it here with just an explanation. So maybe we can just pause here for a second and get people's comments. It's a lot of words, so I'm happy to change it up.
Should it be qualified way as one or qualified as its own on the second bullet?
I think I put the comma and the semicolon in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's qualified way, right, and then it's non-qualified way.
Oh, yeah.
Again, just, the format thing, that first bullet, why wouldn't you lead with the state law and case law related to building lots? Again, state the strongest argument right up.
Okay.
That's why we're doing it, yeah. In other words, the previous slide, Peter, or whatever.
No, I think he's suggesting this to ensure that development follows state and
Exactly, yeah.
Case law.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, yes.
I'll go through and prove this. I'm not sure.
Follows or complies or some such. Maybe complies with state law and case law. I don't know.
But just lead with the,
Yeah, lead with the strong statement first.
Yeah.
Okay,
this is why we're doing it.
yeah. Okay,
Or you can really say, rather than ensure that development complies, just say, we don't comply, we don't currently comply with state. law.
well, it's not that we don't, it's in some cases we don't.
Okay.
And
Well,
sure,
whatever.
bad, yeah, but I see what you mean. Yes.
We're trying to, there's just, it sort of comes back to this concept of like we're now to the point of land use where marginal lots are being developed. So things that people wouldn't have considered ever developing before
No,
Now
I
being-
understand, yeah.
being
No, that-
developed. And so it's putting pressure on us having our definitional and act together in order to be able to combat that.
Now, if you took the fourth bullet here
Mhm.
and moved it to another slide and moved that example of common driveways, you could maybe kill two birds with one stone. I'm thinking,
Mitch,
in other words, add that, yeah, up there. And finally, yes, wherever it is, wherever it went to, yeah, make it bigger. Finally changes, da-da-da. And this is an example, another example, again, of which we have many of us being an outlier. And I think you are killing two birds with one stone. You've got a good example, but it also ties into a recommended change.
yeah,
It's more than just an example. We are going to fix this,
yep.
proposing that we fix it.
All right, so I think I'll probably lead with since we're going from research to research, I'll probably lead with this.
Yeah,
here's
there
the
are many
date.
ways to skin a cat. I mean, but just,
No, I like grouping it because it felt like a little bit of a non sequitur on the other slide, and at least now the conversation is grouped into one place. Oops. Okay. All right.
yeah, this is a powerful point.
Okay. All right. I don't sense that there's going to be a lot of pushback from folks on this one, Tom, on your board.
No, no. I don't think so.
I almost
Other-
think we're leading
Other
with.
than
the
nitpick, it'll be nitpicking word stuff, wordsmithing probably at most. I don't think on substance, anybody's gonna bother you.
And I think you could come back, Katie, if that happens and say, look, this language is out of state or case law. We aren't crafting something in a vacuum. We're plagiarizing.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we've done the research with 24 towns. We're not going off the reservation here. So in many cases, it's really providing definitions that don't exist in order to allow us to defend.
Right, that don't exist in our bylaws, but do exist elsewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, you could argue we've already gone off the reservation. We're trying to get on the back,
We're
right
trying to get back on the
back on the right
reservation.
course.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I think we've got a really good flow here, and you guys help me clean this up. I'll clean it up further, but I'm feeling good about 2 in terms of the flow. And I don't think I think we're gonna expend all of our energy on 1. So it's almost good that we're doing that first. And this will be an easier conversation in contrast. And then our last one is ledge protection. And as we all know, this is really, there's only 2 slides to this, and here's the research that we've done since we had the conversation at annual town meeting around amending Article 11 to incorporate clearing activities. We're now coming back to you asking for additional amendments to address what is a community issue related to ledge. Based on help from the community and our own work, we were able to identify 8 examples of development or potential development as it relates to exposed ledge face in Cohasset. We looked at the underlying statutes in Mass General Law 40, Section 2117, that allows towns to regulate the removal of soil, loam, sand, or gravel from land not in public use. With the help of council, we've reviewed the proposed language, and we identified 2 towns who have successfully proposed and approved at their town meetings exposed ledge regulation, but probably more importantly to Cohasset, also passed Attorney General approval. And so we've looked at those 2 bylaws, not necessarily to take the mechanics of how they did it, but to provide us with comfort that it is possible to regulate this in a manner that still preserves underlying landowners' rights, but address a community issue as it relates to topographical changes. I would note that both in Manchester by the Sea and in Rockport, that exempt activities were an important piece of that regulation. And in both cases, exempt activities include, and that exempt from regulation, I should say, include authorized structures, drives, activities, septic and utilities activities. And this is common in both of the bylaws. So the recommendation is that we regulate exposed ledge. This is a phase 2. Anyway, I'm losing my train of thought, but yes.
This guy, Tom Bell, who sent you an email on
Yeah.
from Concom, who the hell is he and what is his issue here? Is he gonna muck up the works at town
That's-
meeting at least?
That's Amy Glassmeyer's husband,
It's Amy
FYI.
Glassmere's husband.
And he's been on the Conservation Commission.
Sorry, Tom.
What the hell does he know?
So
Ah,
The
ah.
hell is he?
This
Oh,
meeting's being recorded.
I know, I
That's
know.
well, fine. I didn't remember his name.
A fine fellow. What,
I
his
just,
his
you know,
proposal though, what did he propose that we use instead of ledge?
So I only forwarded it. I don't think,
Bedrock is what he said.
Bedrock. I don't know if there's any merit there, or should we stick with ledge?
I
People know what
consider,
ledge means.
I consider bedrock to be underground.
Me too.
My common understanding of the word is it's underground.
It's usually
Okay.
through like a geotech analysis. I've never, I think what, I agree with you, Tom.
Ah,
so Tom is a geologist by background. So like he was getting super technical with ledge versus bedrock. My answer to him would be that we're using a colloquial language here, and it's colloquial language that other towns have chosen to use. No town is talking bedrock. They have used ledge as the language. So that, I think that's easily addressable. His other comment was, why are we including 11.3A1, which has to do with allowing the transfer of material from one part of a lot to another part of a lot. And the example that he was raising was a commercial example where I think that you might have more concerns about significant modifications to a parcel. I guess the way I kind of look at it is I'm not dismissing his concerns, but on the other hand, the average homeowner in a residential isn't going to spend extra money just to move shit around. Like there's a
Right.
purpose for doing it. On a commercial lot, I mean, the budgets are bigger, the dollars are bigger, there may be more land or more topographical challenges, but in general, in residential, which was what we were trying to address, is really people are doing it based on cost and what they have to accomplish.
In any event, it's always going to be difficult to measure,
Yes.
you know.
It's-
That's never
yeah, and
going
it's
to
been,
change.
it's been difficult to measure for the years it's been in the existing bylaw, but he also should understand that in that scenario of a lot of grade changes, it's going to go through a stormwater permit process,
Yeah. And so
which I thought we referenced somewhere in this, but maybe not.
my suggestion is let's see if Amy raises any of these concerns and address them then. Tom knows me personally because he and I have interacted on a couple other things for master plan recently related to sidewalks. And so I think he was reaching out because of that. I shared it only so I wasn't holding information from the rest of the group. I don't think it's a major opposition, but it was him giving his 2 cents. I don't think he's going to show necessarily to the meeting tomorrow. And if anything, Amy is going to raise it as a comment and we can address it then.
What time
Okay,
are
I mean, it was
what
an
time are we on tomorrow?
We're on at 6:30 tomorrow.
Now,
you guys
Katie, everybody will have in hand the language itself as proposed, right? We hope
Yep.
that they've kept it or from another hearing, our other hearing.
So the planning board should have been distributed in their packets, the actual,
Okay,
the current versions. And I will plan, for example, in the meeting to go from kind of our presentation to toggling to the exact language so that, when we get to the public hearing discussion piece of it, we'll have, the language of the underlying bylaw up on the screen to discuss.
okay,
I think that's going to be important to have the underlying language up for 2 and 3. For 1, it doesn't, it's literally one sentence, like, but for 2, with all the definitions, and 3 with the fact that we're amending a portion of 11, we'll want to be able to reference it. So I will have this readily available to project.
good.
I
I think
like the example from Warren, Vermont in any way, or do you guys think it was so?
I didn't know how to use it, Cassie, kind of in the moment. I think it will be helpful if Clark has this big thing around carrots versus sticks when it comes to design, and ultimately, I think that conversation may be helpful in that respect. But I mean, where we've headed with this is we've gotten away from regulating quantity down to regulating use. And we've limited it to a single use where we're going to subject ledge removal to a special permit process, which is ledge removal for structures as a use. And excuse me, not structure. Is it structures?
Yeah, basically.
Sorry, it is
At
structures.
least
Structures as a use. So
some structures, yeah, anyway.
some structures. So it really, it comes down to a conversation about should that use occur? And if there is ledge present, is the planning board willing to accommodate, or is the planning board willing to say, you know what? In this case, we'd like you to move the pool, or we'd like you to move the patio.
Yeah,
It allows that special permit conversation allows for that carrot stick conversation to happen. But it's only going to happen for structures. It's not going to happen for the dwelling. It's not going to happen for the driveway. It's not going to happen for the utilities. And I like the fact that we've gotten away from this quantity conversation, because as you pointed out, Peter, like who's measuring? It's not like John Hallen's out there counting dump trucks as they leave site. You know? It's pretty easy to tell if somebody put in a pool when you told them not to, you know?
yeah, and it does give the planning board, I think, appropriate judgment or jurisdiction, you know what I mean? It's impossible to imagine everything that could go on. Far easier to take a look at a plan and say, this looks right, or it doesn't seem right for the neighborhood.
Yeah. So I really like the simplicity of it. I think that it also comes back to just like the conversation with number one, that this is a policy decision. We either want to regulate ledge or we don't, you know, and if we don't, then that's fine. If we do, this is the solution that we're proposing.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Good.
Thank you as
Katie,
always.
what's important to note on this, because I remember this coming up, and
Yeah.
it was either Paul Grady or someone, there was a resounding request for this to come back. And so it might be worth just reminding them that, if I recall right from my notes, I thought that they had said, please come back. We want to focus on just this. And I thought, and there were some towns,
Yeah, I
there were some
remember
other
that,
comments too.
Yeah, right.
That was Paul Grady. And I'm happy. That's a great idea, Cassie, to call out Paul, because sometimes by this point in the meeting, he might be falling asleep. To say, this is, at the request of the planning board, we're back to have the phase 2 conversation. Okay. So my plan is to make these edits and then obviously recirculate it to our working group. Tom, do you think it makes sense for me to have Lauren also circulate this to the planning board so that people have it if they want to print it out in advance? I don't care.
Yeah, do that.
Okay.
I mean, unless you really think you might skip over some slides and not use them, and, then, give them something to ask a question about that you're not planning to really talk about. It's up to you, but.
I think we deleted all those that I was like a little bit niggly concerned
Yeah,
about.
all right, all right. And you
So I think there's nothing.
Do it out of precaution.
Okay.
I doubt they'll all read every word of it beforehand.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I will work on this and recirculate it. I'll send it to our working group, and then I'll send it to you, Jen, and Lauren to circulate to the planning board on our behalf. And
Will we get a separate link sent to us, or are we just going to pick it up off the agenda?
Yeah,
Jen?
pick it up off the agenda, and then
we promote you.
we'll see that everybody gets promoted.
That's what we usually do for.
Okay,
Great.
all right.
I haven't even gotten a link for tomorrow night that I'm aware of, but
No, we usually just do everybody for planning because there's so many.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I haven't gotten one yet, so I don't know. if
It's on the agenda. You just do the agenda one. Did she
Oh.
send that? Yeah.
All
And then
right.
that's how she does it.
Have a good night.
All right,
Okay.
guys.
See you
Appreciate
tomorrow.
it.